The lecture hall of the Galactic Academy hummed with the soft chittering and melodic tones of 100 different species. Zoe sat in the back row, her posture carefully controlled, her breathing measured. She had learned, over the past 3 months, to make herself small, to be quiet, to not remind the others that she came from Earth, a Class 12 death world, that most civilized species considered a nightmare realm of evolutionary horrors. Chris sat 2 rows ahead, his human frame hunched over his datapad. He caught her eye briefly and offered a small smile. They were the only 2 humans on campus, bound by the unspoken understanding of what it meant to be constantly watched, constantly judged, constantly feared. Professor Velthari, a graceful Etherian with translucent wings, was mid-sentence about the Treaty of the Outer Rims when the alarm sounded. It wasn't the soft chime of a drill. This was the bone-deep wail of a genuine emergency, a sound Zoe had only heard in safety orientations. Around her, students froze. Some began to whimper. The Etherian professor's wings went rigid with terror. Hostile contact. The automated voice announced in Universal Standard. Crush raiding party detected. 3 vessels. All students proceed to designated safe rooms immediately. The classroom erupted into chaos. Students scrambled for the exits, their panic palpable. The Crush were known throughout the galaxy, brutal pirates who took prisoners for their slave markets and showed no mercy to the weak. Zoe's hands gripped the edge of her desk. Every muscle in her body had gone taut, and she felt something ancient stirring in her chest, something that 3 months of careful civility had kept locked away. Chris had turned in his seat, his eyes meeting hers. She saw the same recognition there, the same awakening. Students, please evacuate in an orderly. Professor Velthari's voice cut off as the building shuddered. Somewhere above them, an explosion rattled the structure. Screams filled the corridor outside. The door to the lecture hall burst open. A Crush warrior stood in the entrance, 7 feet of chitinous armor and muscle, his forearms clutching plasma weapons. His compound eyes swept the room, and his mandibles clicked with satisfaction at the sight of so many soft, helpless prey. Down, Chris shouted, diving behind a desk. Zoe didn't go down. She stood. The desk beneath her hands groaned as her fingers dug into the metal composite. Every instinct that Earth had bred into her species over millions of years of climbing, from prey to apex predator, surged through her veins. Her heart rate spiked. Adrenaline flooded her system. Her pupils dilated. The Crush warrior laughed a horrible clicking sound and raised his weapon toward a cluster of terrified students. Zoe's hands tightened. The desk split. The sound of rending metal silenced the room. She lifted half of the destroyed desk like it weighed nothing, which, by human standards used to Earth's crushing gravity, it practically did. Her breathing had changed, deeper and faster. Her face, which had been so carefully neutral for months, was transformed into something primal. The Crush warrior's mandibles stopped clicking. "Hey." Zoe's voice came out as a growl. "Wrong classroom." She hurled the desk fragment with the force of someone who had grown up in 1G, someone whose muscles had evolved to fight against a planet that tried to crush everything on its surface. The makeshift projectile caught the Crush warrior in his center mass, sending him crashing backward into the corridor. Chris was already moving. He grabbed a broken chair leg, his own human strength making it a viable weapon against creatures who had evolved on worlds where everything was lighter, gentler, easier. 2 more Crush appeared in the doorway. They saw Zoe standing there, breathing hard, her hands bloodied from the shattered desk, her eyes wild with the fury of a species that had hunted mammoths and survived ice ages. They saw Chris moving toward them with the purposeful stride of an Earth predator. The Crush hesitated. That hesitation was fatal. Zoe crossed the distance in seconds, faster than anything from a civilized world should move. She tackled the first warrior with a force that shattered his shoulder plating. Chris swung his improvised weapon at the second, the impact echoing through the hall. The fight was brutal and brief. The Crush were warriors, but they were used to soft target species from gentle worlds who had never known real violence. Zoe and Chris were humans. They carried Earth's savagery in their bones. When it was over, both Crush lay unconscious in the corridor. The third had fled. Zoe stood in the doorway, chest heaving, her carefully maintained facade completely shattered. Behind her, the classroom was silent. Every alien student stared at her with wide eyes, some with terror, some with awe. Professor Velthari's voice was barely a whisper. "By the old light, you're Deathworlders," Chris finished, stepping up beside Zoe. His knuckles were bleeding, but his stance was protective, positioned between the class and the corridor. "Yeah, we are." Zoe turned to face her classmates. She saw their fear, their shock. 3 months of trying to belong, to fit in, to be accepted, all of it had been destroyed in 30 seconds of violence. But as she looked at their faces, she also saw something else: gratitude, relief, recognition that while they had been taught to fear her world, today that fear had saved their lives. She took a deep breath, forcing her heart rate down, willing the battle fury to recede. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "Safe rooms are 2 corridors down. Stay together. Move quickly." She glanced at Chris. "We'll make sure you get there." As the students began to file past, giving her and Chris a wide berth, Zoe caught Professor Velthari's eyes. The Etherean's wings were still trembling, but there was understanding there now. "Thank you," the professor whispered. Zoe nodded. She picked up another desk leg, testing its weight. Outside, alarms still wailed. There were more creche in the building. She looked at Chris, and he looked back at her. For the first time in 3 months, they didn't have to hide what they were. "Ready?" Chris asked. Zoe smiled, a predator's smile, sharp and fierce. "Let's go hunting." They moved into the corridor together, to humans from Earth, finally unleashed.